As a writer, how do you fight off the narcissism, self indulgence, and negative self talk that confronts all of us every single day? And we are about to hear an exchange between David Foster Wallace and Don Delillo on how they ground themselves and try to move away from a lot of these malignant problems that have destroyed countless writers. And this is a very important topic because, from what I've seen in 2024, writers' confidence, because of digital technology and just how bad the publishing industry is right now, suffer from these things almost automatically. I've known writers who've never even written a poem before who just want to become a writer and are already dealing with these problems. And if you guys want more videos on Wallace or on DeLillo, there is no other place on YouTube that you will find deep dives on them except here. But enough from me. Let us now hear from Wallace and DeLillo. In October 1995, David Foster Wallace wrote to him, "Because I tend both to think I'm uniquely afflicted and tend to idolize people I admire, I tend to imagine you never having had to struggle with any of this narcissism or indulgence stuff. Maybe I want a pep talk because I have to tell you, I don't enjoy this war one bit." DeLillo responded in November. "I was a semi-conscious writer in the beginning," he writes. "Just sat and wrote something, or read the newspaper, or went to the movies. Over time, I began to understand, one, that I was lucky to be doing this work, and two, that the only way I'd get better at it was to become more serious, to understand the rigors of novel writing, and to make it central to my life, not a variation on some related career choice like sports writing or playwriting. The novel is different. We die indoors and alone, and I don't mean to sound overdramatic, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, all of this happened over time, until eventually discipline no longer seemed something outside me that urged the reluctant body into the room. At this point, discipline is inseparable from what I do. It's not even definable as discipline. It has no name. I never think about it. But there's no trick of meditation or self mastery that brought it all about. I got older, that's all. I was not a born novelist, if anyone is. I had to grow into novelhood." And you can hear the maturity of DeLillo here, because I would love to sit here and give you guys the hacks and say, hey, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be great. And I've talked about and made a video about the outlier novelists who have become great in their first couple of years of novel writing. But for most of us, it is a multi-decade process just to get comfortable with the act of novel writing. Because when you are comfortable, you don't need any hacks. You can't blame your ADHD or your anxiety for not being able to get to the page. You don't need a timer. You don't need to tell your wife, I need to have a schedule and we need to block Saturday morning off, because all of that has been figured out and overcome at the start of the journey. And Wallace in the letter makes a great point that most of us think that we are uniquely afflicted, that these problems only relate to us. And it's true in a sense that your conglomeration of problems and past trauma are unique to you. But when you look at any field, people deal with the same problems and the same anxieties. But in other fields, if you are a construction manager or you are working sales, it is very direct response. And even if there is a multi-month project, very few jobs deal with multi-year projects where you don't get any feedback at all and do zero collaboration for years. Because even if you are a musician or a director or another type of artist and you're doing a multi-year project, it's in collaboration. And so this is when the problems start. And this is when Wallace says, I tend to idolize people I admire. And so this is, once again, connecting to the previous idea, something that happens in writing, that this is why so many of us, and maybe that's why I'm making this channel right now, become obsessed with writers, because we are alone. And so we need some spiritual allies. We need some spiritual power around us through the idealization of other people to uplift us. And when I say it in these kind of clear and plain terms, it sounds silly, right? It sounds really dumb that we are doing this. And there are people out there that say, I don't need anything, I'll just do it. But as I've mentioned many times before, those people, when I've read their stuff, it has never been good. And I think when you are young, there are people who are, you fanboy more. And you do idolize people and you do kind of look over certain things. But people tell this to me all the time. They're like, you're obsessed with David Foster Wallace or Cormac McCarthy. You look over all their flaws. I'm like, dude, I broke the Cormac McCarthy, Jeff Epstein stuff. I'll laugh about David Foster Wallace's insecurities and problems all day. But I'm not totally free from idolization. But, after 13 or 14 years of reading these guys and DeLillo, I can just talk because I've read their bibliography for the first time such a long time ago that it's just kind of integrated into my body. But a lot of people the start of their writing journey, or sometimes when you confront a new author that you've never heard of before and they have this deep web of writing, you can idolize them. And the problem with that is even though it can uplift you, a lot of the time the pressure that you put on yourself is terrible because Cormac McCarthy and David Foster Wallace didn't really have jobs and they could spend 7,000 plus hours revising one of their novels and microing every single sentence. I recently was reading Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami, and there were no tricks. There was no crazy sentence structure or like stuff like that. But as I was reading it and I was thinking about it in relation to Delillo, Faulkner, McCarthy, Wallace, and some of the other authors I am currently reading, I was saying to myself, even though this is in translation, at some level it feels better because I don't feel like Murakami was microing every single sentence. What I mean by that is that he didn't spend thousands of hours just going back and just trying to show everyone that he's the smartest guy, that he can write these crazy sentences. Because that's what makes something like a White Noise or an Underworld really good. Even though is great plot and great characterization, Don DeLillo can hit you with his writing. His writing is so good that some of his novels, like Libra, for instance, it didn't necessarily draw me in very well, but I just wanted to keep reading for his writing. A lot of his novels actually in his bibliography, including his first one, Americana, aren't these masterpieces, but because he forced his way to the top through style, then I'm carried through. But someone like a Murakami or a different type of author like him, when you read him, there is a magical quality to it. And it's not just because there may be like magical realism in the novel, it's just there. And so that's one of the liberating properties. I shouldn't say this is making this sound like a scientific experiment, everyone. That's one of the liberating aspects of being a modern writer is that even if you sat and microed every single sentence for 7,000 hours, there's a 65% chance that books, if it gets published, is going to sell less than 1,000 copies, which means that you would get $2,000 for that. Because that was a tactic. If you sat and you worked on something really hard, you could almost guarantee that you were going to get published and get some success, even dating back to the 2000s. And so there was this pressure because when you look at Don DeLillo, Cormac McCarthy, David Foster Wallace, and many others, William T. Vollmann, they were all talented and educated and primed to be writers from the start. And unfortunately, that's not all of us. And so I know for me that trying to be that guy, trying to be the best writer is appealing because here I am, as a figure. And as you start to gain notoriety for your writing or whatever else, there's more pressure. Like, I want to show you guys, oh, I can write. Look at me. And so many people crack under that pressure. And when this combines with the other type of pressure, where you don't think that you were writing for an audience, but you were writing for art's sake or just writing because you think that you are a writer and you are doing this for some higher ideal that isn't transforming others, the ideal of art, which a lot of people think this too, then I think those are the two big killers of art. Maybe we could throw in a third and a second, but so many of you guys have not written as much as you should have or have made enough progress because of literally the pressure you are putting on yourself that doesn't even matter. And Wallace was one of these type of individuals, DeLillo and McCarthy, these guys were kind of these stronger men who didn't necessarily have these kind of inner wars as much. But Wallace was born with, I would say, probably some mental health issues. He was raised in a very kind of traumatic household. He was on antidepressants at a young age. He was a drug addict and an alcoholic in his teen years, and that continued for over a decade. And maybe some of us aren't as extreme as that, but if you are younger than Wallace, and most of us are, then every single year, the anxiety, the pressure, the digital tools that can cause anxiety just get better and better. And so even if we aren't addicts or have crazy parents, we're still dealing with a lot of the same things. And you can see a lot of this through a lot of the self-indulgent writing, because where this kind of manifests and where this kind of goes is that you feel this feeling, you feel this anxiety, and the easy way out is to say, oh my God, I'm just going to write what I want to write. I'm just going to do a novel for me. I'm just going to do a fun novel. I'm going to do this, my voice, my story. And once again, it's the same thing. It's the same kind of side of the people microing. You're just doing your story. And this is where we get all the superficial work. And for a long time, that stuff didn't necessarily matter. It was always just a laughable, hey, the airplane thrillers, all the fun stuff, the romances. But now with 4 million books published every single year, and that's a stat before AI and ChatGPT really became a thing. And so I can imagine now with those, we're probably going to start by the end of the 2020s getting closer to 10 million books published every single year. And so most likely if you were writing a superficial book and you're not wanting to write for and revise for 8,000 hours, then you probably have some grandiosity. You probably have something weird happening within you. And that is not the literary renaissance. A renaissance, which means a rebirth, transforms culture. And our rebirth as authors is to know that we may not be as smart and as talented and have as much time as some of these previous authors behind us, but they failed in their mission to get people interested in their work. Because we are the 1%. If you are watching this video right now and are reading Dostoevsky and Proust and all these people, or at least you will sometime in the future, you are not the everyday reader. And I think it's odd that a lot of the times we are writing for this ever moving target that is only getting more difficult to capture, because at the same time, every single day, or sorry, not every day, but every single day, the internet is becoming more toxic. Reddit and the mob just continues to gain resentment and anxiety and get more people into it. And so no matter what, you are going to get hate. And not just hate, but total logical dissections of your personal life and your work if you get any form of success. And a lot of writers and a lot of people, and this was a good strategy in the past, but today trying to appease those groups is one of the least intelligent things that you can do. Yesterday, I was talking to someone over on in my free writing school, because I'm doing 100 calls with people, or I'm just giving people free coaching and talking to them. But I was talking to someone, and he is in the crypto space, and he had all these limitations on himself. And he was like, they're not going to like this. And I was like, dude, I understand that at the bottom of the libertarian, decentralized cryptocurrency space, there are, those guys are the biggest logic bros ever. If you send them an email, if you do anything that is through PayPal, or if you try to send them a physical book that's not a zine that you stapled yourself from paper from your local tree, they're going to fucking flip out. And they're so logically intelligent and so vicious that they will make a big deal out of you. But that's not the standard that you need. But there's this whole other group of people like myself who understand and could get into anarchist, decentralized cryptocurrency stuff. And I can personally understand all that, who aren't like that. And most of the people into that stuff aren't like those logic bros at the bottom of the barrel. But those guys are the ones with the loudest voices. Those are the ones who are on the forums, who are obsessing over this stuff and are ready to attack someone. And so if you keep looking for modern society's response and for their validation, it's always going to be a losing game, especially if you were trying to compete with some of the greatest authors of all time. And so instead, you can acknowledge that those people are going to really just tear you down no matter what. And instead, focus on the work of transforming through your art the masses. And if you can't transform the masses, if we have 50,000 people who get their mind off of themselves and the bottom of the barrel crowd in the literature community and go a couple steps up and free themselves of their unique afflictions and idolizations and narcissism, then writing in 2024 can become a beautiful thing, because you can affect, a medium-sized group of people who are going to enjoy and love you and support you in becoming a full-time author. You don't need to be a bestseller anymore. It's mind-blowing. If you have 1,000 people pay you $5 a month on Substack and sell 2,000 books a year, 2,000 books a year on Amazon, suddenly you're making $70,000 plus dollars. And so that's the software that we need to plug into our brain. Right now, we have this crazy virus that's running around, and we need to clean it out and understand that if we want to get to the end goal, which Delillo was talking about, which is making novel writing the central focus of your life, making writing this way, that to actually accomplish that, you're going to have to be grounded. You're going to have to reach the point where discipline is inseparable from what you do. And unless you are one of those, like I said, those old school types, and there's some out there, you're going to have to consciously change how you write, how you think about yourself, and who you are writing for, and what your purpose on earth as a writer is, if you ever want to achieve that. And that's going to take you a decade of trying. That doesn't just happen automatically. Your audience doesn't grow overnight. And I would like to think, as this, Delillo says, I had to grow into novelhood. But, and this is people are going to cringe at this. Like, this is the last word. This is like a antonym of writer. But I'm imagining that for this literary renaissance over time, that we are going to grow if we stay grounded, not just into writers, but into leaders of our artistic space. And that doesn't mean you need to have a megaphone or have a manifesto or something like that. But that's how people are going to see you. When you say something, they're going to view it as canonical for that movement, for that subsection, the micro genre that you are killing it in. And through, funny enough, this decentralized process, we have an ability to actually make something happen, everyone. Every other method or idea is fool's gold. The publishing world is not making a comeback. MFA programs are not making a comeback. Print on demand, genre selling with Amazon ads and with all those hacks and audiobooks are not going to work. It may work for individuals, but for an actual rebirth of a literary society that is spiritually and educationally awakening through the four modes of education: emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and physical. We have to think bigger. We have to self-sacrifice a little bit and align ourselves with that goal. And so, thank you guys for being here. The Literary Renaissance is live. Renaissance is live, everyone. If you guys want to join my Substack where I post daily podcasts, I have a David Foster Wallace course, a bunch of other cool stuff. You can find that link down below. I have a free writing school. I also have a doc that details over 400 of David Foster Wallace's favorite books, which is an insane list. And with that, have a great Monday, and I will see you guys later.